They dropped the cadets without ceremony, because ceremony implied respect, and the instructors had none to spare. The dropships cut through the cloud layers like blunt knives, and the planet rose to meet them. All black stone and green storms, a Class 3 Deathworld, according to the neat letters in the briefing packet, which meant unpredictable gravity, violent weather, aggressive biospheres, and a long history of things evolving specifically to till anything that moved. The cadets had memorized that definition on the ride down, their hearts hammering in synchronized fear, while the instructors watched through armored glass and took notes. Humanity had joined the academy only a few cycles ago, still new, still strange, still treated like a curiosity that would either break or burn out spectacularly. And so when the dropship doors slammed open and the gravity clamps disengaged, there was a moment of collective terror, followed by screaming wind, and then the fall. Training suits deployed grav tubes, most of them flailing, some colliding, some landing hard among jagged rock and thorned vegetation that hissed when disturbed. The air smelled metallic and wet. Lightning cracked in the distance, and the ground trembled with something large moving far away. Within seconds, the squad leaders began shouting orders, their voices sharp with panic and authority. They tried to establish a perimeter, to count heads, to get bearings, but the terrain swallowed sound and the storm swallowed sight. Every movement stirred something hostile. Insects the size of fists burst from the soil. Birds with blade-like wings screamed overhead. Plants recoiled and snapped shut around unlucky boots. This was supposed to be a test, a controlled survival exercise, with instructors monitoring from orbit, ready to intervene if casualties rose too high. That was the official line, at least. What none of them realized yet was that this planet was underclassified. The ecosystem more aggressive than any simulation had predicted, and the instructors knew it. They wanted to see who would break first among the cadets. There were 12 species represented, tall scaled warriors from high-gravity worlds, delicate avians wrapped in pressure mesh, silicon-based thinkers rolling on segmented limbs. And in the middle of them all stood one human cadet, helmet already off, rain plastering dark hair to a face split by a wide grin. He looked around at the chaos, at the screaming, at the snapping plants, and the thunder. And he laughed. Not a hysterical laugh, but a bright, genuine sound, like someone recognizing an old friend, over the squad channel. His voice cut through the noise, casual, amused. Hey, just checking. Is anyone else getting strong vacation vibes? Because this feels a lot like spring break back home. There was a pause, as translators struggled with the idiom. Some cadets thought he was malfunctioning. Others thought it was bravado born of fear. But the human didn't wait for a response. Straps on his pack, checked the blade at his hip, and started moving toward higher ground, calling out suggestions like he was organizing a picnic instead of a survival scenario. First thing we want, elevation. Second thing we want, water that isn't actively trying to eat us. Third thing we want, to stop screaming. It attracts predators. He said this while a six-legged reptile lunged from the brush, jaws snapping. The human sidestepped smoothly, drove his blade into a joint, and used the creature's momentum to flip it over. The motion was efficient, practiced. The creature thrashed once, then went still. The human wiped the blade on its hide and kept walking. Anyone allergic to venom? Because that thing definitely had venom. Several cadets stared in shock. Combat training had prepared them for sparring, for drones, for predictable enemies. Not for this. Not for the speed and confidence with which the human moved. The squad leader, a broad-shouldered Avrixian, barked at him to fall in line, to follow protocol. Human saluted 2 fingers to his temple, and complied easily, matching pace, still talking, still observing terrain, like he was narrating a tour. This moss is going to be slick when the rain picks up, and it will pick up, because that cloud formation means heavy precipitation in about 20 minutes. Also, see those trees leaning away from the valley? That means something big moves through there regularly, so we don't camp there. Oh, and don't touch the red flowers. They explode. Not deadly, but super annoying. Ask me how I know. No one asked how he knew, but a few quietly adjusted their path away from the flowers. Above them in orbit, instructors leaned forward, their screens filled with telemetry and biosigns. They expected panic, disarray, maybe a few quiet deaths. What they saw instead was a strange stabilization centered on the human cadet. Heart rate elevated, but steady. Stress hormones present, but not overwhelming. Movement efficient. Energy expenditure optimized. One instructor scoffed and said it was a fluke. Another frowned, because the human's readings looked less like a trainee and more like a guide on the ground. The cadets reached a rocky outcrop as the storm intensified. Rain fell in sheets. Lightning struck close enough to rattle teeth. The human helped rig a shelter using fallen branches, flexible vine, and the remains of a shattered grav chute. He worked with quick hands, teaching as he went, making jokes to keep morale up. Back home, we do this with tarps, duct tape, and regret, he said, as he anchored a support. The Avrexian squad leader grudgingly admitted the shelter was solid, and allowed the human to continue advising. As night fell, the planet came alive in new terrifying ways. Eyes glowed in the darkness. Calls, echoes that vibrated through bone. The temperature dropped sharply. Several cadets began to panic again, especially when something large brushed against the shelter, testing it. The human calmly distributed tasks. Keep the fire low. Use that sap. It burns hot and smokeless. Every hour. No exceptions. And whatever you hear, don't chase it. Curiosity gets you killed here. Trust me. A small insectoid cadet asked in a trembling voice how he knew so much about Deathworld survival. The human paused for a moment. His smile softer, then shrugged. Earth is technically a class 12. If you guys used our scale. Predators, diseases, weather, all competing constantly. We just kind of grew up like this. Plus, camping trips. My mum was really into those. Laughter rippled, weak but real, and the tension eased a little. The night passed with no casualties, though no one slept well. At dawn, fog rolled in thick and heavy. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. The human insisted they move before larger predators tracked them by scent and warmth. They navigated by sound and feel, the human leading, counting steps, noting wind direction. Eventually they reached a river, wide, fast, and full of shapes moving beneath the surface. The squad leader hesitated. Crossing protocols warned against unknown aquatic threats. The human tested the water with a tossed rock, watched the ripples, listened, then nodded. We can cross upstream where it narrows, but we'll need to build a line and move together. And do not let go. Whatever you do, don't let go. Because if you fall in, they will pull you under and spin you until you drown. Someone asked what they were. The human squinted. Fish, technically, but like if piranhas went to the gym and developed teamwork. Again, the translator struggled, but the fear was clear. They crossed as instructed. Every cadet made it, though one lost a boot to snapping jaws on the far bank. The human laughed and clapped them on the shoulder. Congratulations, you've paid the river tax. As the day wore on, the cadets realized something unsettling. The human wasn't just surviving. He was enjoying himself. The danger, the problem solving, the constant adaptation, it energized him. When the instructors finally triggered an escalation, releasing an apex predator to push the exercise toward its breaking point. The ground shook, and the forest went silent. The creature emerged, massive, armored, bristling with spines, eyes burning with hunger. The cadets froze, weapons raised, hands shaking. The human sighed like someone interrupted mid-nap and muttered, "Oh, come on." They charged when it charged, shouting directions, throwing debris, drawing its attention, coordinating fire and movement in a way that felt less like training and more like instinct. When it was over, the creature lay still, the cadets battered, bruised, alive. The human leaned on his knees, breathing hard, grinning wide, and said, "Okay, that one I admit is not spring break. That's more like finals week in orbit." The instructors stared at their screens, silence heavy. One finally whispered, "What exactly did we drop them into?" Another answered quietly, "A human's comfort zone." The instructors argued in low tones, as the cadets regrouped, unaware of how close the exercise had come to being terminated. The data streams showed injuries, elevated stress, but cohesion improving. Something unheard of on first contact Deathworld trials. The human cadet designated H-17 by the Academy records, but called Jack by himself, and now by several others, moved through the group, checking gear, taping cracked armor plates, improvising splints from flexible bark and resin. He talked constantly, not nonsense, but observations and small lessons like breadcrumbs of calm. Watch how the birds stop calling when something big moves nearby. Smell that sweet rot means edible fungus nearby. But cook it first or you'll regret it later. Keep your backs to stone whenever possible, because most things here like to pounce from behind. The Avrexian squad leader finally confronted him, asking bluntly why he wasn't afraid. Jack shrugged again, that same easy motion, like fear was a jacket he could put on or take off. I am afraid, he said. I just don't let it drive the car. Fear's good. It tells you when to pay attention. The trick is listening without panicking. The words translated cleanly, and something shifted. The leader nodded once and didn't argue further. By midday, the storm returned harsher than before. Wind howling, rain like needles. The ground turned slick and treacherous. One cadet slipped and tumbled down a ravine, saved only by Jack diving after them, anchoring both to a root that bent but didn't break. They hung there, soaked and shaking. Jack's laughter bubbled up, breathless. That was almost bad timing, kid. You good? The rescued cadet, the thin avian, nodded, tears mixing with rain. When they climbed back up, others stared at Jack with something like awe. He waved it off. Please, my mum calls that a normal Tuesday. The ravine incident wasn't lost on the instructors either. Risk tolerance, extreme reaction time, high situational awareness. One muttered that humans might be dangerous allies. Another replied, allies. Yes. Enemies. God help us. The exercise parameters quietly changed. Extraction delayed. Objectives expanded. The cadets were ordered deeper into the continent, toward a beacon point, known for hostile megafauna. When the message came through, the human listened, then grinned wider. Looks like the party's just getting started. Some cadets groaned, others actually smiled. The march grew harder. Terrain rising into broken highlands. Steam vents hissed from the ground, releasing clouds that burned lungs if inhaled too deeply. Jack taught them to read the color and sound. Safe vents whistled, angry ones roared. They lost 2 hours, detouring around a nest of armored grazers that looked peaceful, until one lifted its head, revealing a mouthful of grinding plates. Jack steered them wide, whispering, herbivores kill more people than predators back home. No one questioned him. As night fell again, the second night was worse. Something tracked them patiently, not attacking, just following, far enough to stay out of sight. Enough to keep pressure morale frayed. Whispers spread the insectoid cadet, clicked nervously, asking if this was how they died. Jack listened to the dark, then said, no, this is how it waits, so we stop moving. We won't give it that. He organized a false camp, left heat signatures and scent markers, then led the group through a cold stream, doubling back over rock. By dawn, the tracker was gone. The cadets cheered softly, exhausted but alive. Jack accepted a ration bar from the Avrexian and grimaced. Biting into it like a punishment food crime, he declared. But calories are calories. Day 3 brought the beacon into range. Perched atop a ridge, surrounded by ruins of an ancient alien structure, half melted by geological violence. Sensors flickered, unreliable. The instructors watched intently, expecting overconfidence to finally cost them. As they approached, automated defenses activated. Drones emerged, weapons hot. The cadets took cover. Chaos threatened again. Jack slid into command without ceremony. Teams, calling angles using the ruins as funnels. Disable, don't destroy, he shouted. We want their power cells, not debris. When the last drone fell, sparking, Jack scavenged components, rigged a temporary shield around the beacon, and collapsed against the stone, breathing hard. Okay, Okay, that's enough excitement for one trip. Someone tell me there's a gift shop. The laughter that followed was loud, real, cathartic. Something cracked open. Then not just relief, but trust. When the instructors finally initiated extraction. Dropships roaring in through the clouds. The cadets formed up. Disciplined, unified, battered, proud. The Avrexian squad leader reported mission success, voice steady, and added a recommendation that human cadets be integrated earlier into mixed squads for morale and survival optimization. In orbit, the instructors debriefed in stunned silence. Footage replayed, Jack's grin, his calm, his reckless competence. One finally said softly, "They called it spring break and meant it." Another replied with, humorless smile. "Then we should stop throwing humans into hell and start asking them how to survive it." The debrief should have been the end of it. Paperwork, evaluations, a few commendations, maybe a reprimand for excessive initiative. Instead, the third phase began without warning. The cadets were barely cleaned, fed, and medically cleared when alarms rang through the station. A real alarm, not the measured tone of an exercise alert. Red lights washed the corridors, and the instructors, who had watched from a safe distance, now moved with urgency. Voices clipped, faces tight. The station AI announced a containment breach on a lower ring. An indigenous life form, recovered months earlier from the same Deathworld, had escaped its habitat. Casualties were already reported. The irony was not lost on anyone. They had survived the planet only to face it again in metal corridors, gravity plating humming beneath their feet. The cadets were ordered to muster. Some protested. This wasn't training anymore. Others froze. Jack was already moving, tightening straps, checking weapons, eyes sharp but excited. Unsettling way, like someone hearing their favorite song start to play. "Well," he said, "guess spring break got extended." The instructors hesitated. Protocol did not allow untested cadets into active containment scenarios. But the data, the last 3 days, the cohesion, the survival rates, the human factor tipped the scales. They were authorized as support only, reconnaissance perimeter assistance, no direct engagement. Jack nodded, then promptly ignored the last part. As soon as they hit the lower ring, the smell hit them. Copper and ozone, scorch marks on the walls, clawed gouges through bulkheads. Security drones lay torn apart. Something heavy had moved through here. Something smart enough to avoid kill zones. The insectoid cadet chittered in fear, identifying pheromone markers, territorial, aggressive. The Avrexian swallowed hard, recognizing hunting patterns. Jack crouched, touched a mark, sniffed the air, and stood. Yeah, okay, that's bad news. It's marking escape routes, which means it's looking for a way off station, which means if it gets to a shuttle bay, we're all in trouble. He started assigning positions before anyone could stop him, using hand signals, voice low, efficient. Move in pairs, keep overlapping sight lines. Don't corner it unless you want to get eaten. And if it charges, aim for joints or sensory clusters, not center mass. The creature emerged at the far end of the corridor, larger than any recording suggested. All muscle, plated hide, bioluminescent veins pulsing as it roared, a sound that made bones vibrate. Panic flared, then steadied, as Jack stepped forward, planting his feet, raising his weapon, and shouting, "Now! Focus! Remember the drill. This is just a hallway with worse weather." They moved as one, flanking, drawing it away from civilian sectors, herding it toward an airlock bay. The fight was brutal but controlled. Blasts scorched walls, claws slammed into shields. One cadet went down. Jack dragged them clear, never breaking stride, yelling encouragement like a coach at a game. "Good, walk it off. You'll have a great scar story," when they finally forced the creature into the bay and vented the atmosphere, watching it get pulled screaming into the void. There was no cheering, just heavy breathing, shaking hands, and then relief. Deep and shaky, the station was safe. The instructors stared, not in horror, but in dawning understanding during the final debrief. The word Deathworld was redefined, not as a classification of danger, but as a measure of adaptability. Humanity was no longer an anomaly to be tested, but a benchmark. Jack sat at the back, feet up, ignoring the formal praise until an instructor asked directly what he thought of the academy. Now he considered, then grinned. It's fine. Maybe add better food, and fewer attempts to kill us for bonding purposes. But yeah, 5 stars would survive again. Laughter filled the room, and for the first time it wasn't at humanity, but with them. Across the academy, and then across the galaxy, the story spread, not as an official report, but as a rumor. Whispered between cadets and soldiers. They dropped humans on a Class 3 Deathworld, and the humans called it spring break. Recruitment numbers surged. Joint exercises were rewritten. Survival manuals quietly added human consultants. And somewhere on a quiet station, a human cadet planned his next vacation, looking at a map of dangerous places and smiling.